When I decided to go from Full HD to 4K, I wanted a compact, which could shoot in 4K, had a lot of zoom, and was a smaller form factor, so I could bring it on vacations and road trips and concerts and stuff like that. So I started out buying the Sony DSC-HX99, which is a very small form factor. Has a half 0.3 inch sensor, I think. Goes from, let's see, I think it's 24 through 720 and millimeters, obviously, the lens. And that was like sort of the perfect area for me. I really liked the camera when I got it. It shoots great photos, shoots good video. But then I ran into the recording limit obstacle, because the Sony only shoots 5 minutes of 4K and then it shuts off. It's due to EU rules that if a camera can shoot more than 5 minutes of 4K or 29 minutes of Full HD, it counts as a camcorder, and the tax is higher on those. So I went hunting for something similar, but that would have a longer recording time, so I could record longer songs at concerts and so on. So I went for the Panasonic Lumix DC-TZ95, which has basically the same specs, same size sensor, same focal lengths, shoots in 4K, but the recording limit is 15 minutes instead of 5. So I've been out in the woods and in town trying both these cameras out, shooting, if not identical, then similar footage and photos on both cameras to see which has the better image quality, which has the better autofocus, better face tracking, faster autofocus, better low light performance, and so on and so on. Because I had been looking on YouTube, and I couldn't find a test that compared these two cameras, or even the Sony with the predecessor, the TZ90. And when I did find anything similar, then it wasn't in English or a language I could understand. So I thought maybe there are other people looking for a 4K point-and-shoot that want a comparison between these two cameras. As you can probably tell, the Panasonic crops out a lot when shooting 4K. It's about 10 centimeters behind the Sony, and still it's a tighter shot of me. They're both fully zoomed out in my shelf on my desk here. So that is a problem with the Panasonic, especially if you want to use it as a vlogging camera, or if you want to use it to take selfies at arm's length. You get a way tighter shot than you do on the Sony if you're filming yourself in 4K. In Full HD, it uses the full width of the sensor, so you get a wider shot shooting in Full HD than in 4K. Quick audio test. So this is the sound being recorded by the Sony. Not sure if it's clear or not. I haven't checked all the footage yet, especially not indoors filming myself like this. And this is the audio being recorded by the Panasonic. Quick reflection on the flip-up screens right now. The Sony looks a bit darker, but a bit more natural. The Panasonic looks a bit too bright and a bit too oversaturated by the sunlight coming into my office right now. So, let's go on to the test footage that I've been shooting. So let's start out with a few macro shots that I took indoors. This first one is some nuts and bolts on my desk lit up by a fluorescent light in the evening. And here are some of a souvenir made of glass with some stones in it. Now here's the forest, first fully zoomed out, then halfway zoomed in, then fully zoomed in. Okay, on to video. Here's the stabilization test. So both cameras are on a monopod. One on the actual monopod and the other on a clamp attached to the monopod. I'm going to try to use it as a Steadicam, walking very smoothly. I should add that the clamp that the Sony is on is stable, but not super stable. It does wobble a bit, but it still looks like the Panasonic Stabilization is better right here. The same can't really be said for its autofocus. Onto some zoom tests, autofocus tests, and vlogging tests out in the forest. Okay, so this is the Panasonic zoomed in all the way on a monopod, slowly panning along the forest here. Okay, so those trees are really far away. Oh, what's going on? Those trees are really far away. Now I'm going to zoom out fully. That's 35mm equivalent. Now here's the Sony doing the same. Slow pan on a monopod, fully zoomed in on the forest. Mounted where the Panasonic previously was. So you'll be able to tell how each camera copes with autofocusing at this focus length, or at this distance. So those are the same faraway trees. And now zoom out fully so you can tell the amount of zoom I can apply. Now this is really testing the stabilization. I'm fully zoomed in on that same part of the woods, handheld with the Sony. Now slowly zooming out. Now that was using the handheld with the Panasonic, fully zoomed in, using the electronic viewfinder, which is the word I forgot a second ago. There are those faraway woods again. Slowly zooming out. So that should give you an idea. Okay, so here's the tree stump in the woods with a hole in it with some pine cones in. This is handheld autofocus No zoom applied. Now here's the Panasonic filming the same tree stump with the pine cones and things in it. Again, fully autofocus, fully zoomed out. Trying to do about the same motion here. Just kind of hard to do because I can't really remember exactly how I moved it, but so here's a fun little test I made up the other week, which is zoom in fully and then loosen the ball joint on the monopod and try to follow the stem of a tree. It's not a stem of a tree, the trunk of the tree, all the way up, and see if it keeps autofocus. It's not working that well right now because it's focused on the brushes in front of the tree, but there it is. I lost focus on the tree now. I think. And then we zoom out. Okay, same test with the Sony. Zoom in fully on the tree trunk. It's not having the same problems with the focus on the tree trunk apparently. And now use the ball joint to slowly pan up the tree trunk. At an angle apparently. And we zoom out. So this is the flip screen up in sort of selfie mode on the Panasonic. Handheld at arm's length. I'm carefully spinning around to see if it stays focused on my face and also how it handles the different lighting scenarios. Okay, here's the Sony again, arm's length, selfie mode with the flip screen up, handheld at arm's length. Maybe I said that already. Checking the autofocus on my face, checking how it's handling the different lighting scenarios. You can probably tell that I'm way better framed on the Sony because the Panasonic actually crops off quite a lot of the sensor. Enough videos for a while, let's look at some photos from the forest and my village. First up, some photos of some puddles zoomed in different degrees with both cameras. To my eyes, the colors and the detail are way better on the Sony in almost all these photos. This mini windmill is actually in my yard. Next up is me panning along the street outside with a high zoom degree to follow some cars, and next is some video of me driving. So I'm taking these two cameras on a lovely drive and some lovely country roads out where I live. So we can test out the stabilization and simply how they cope with being clamped to the dash of a car with a kind of a flimsy clamp. Same one that I used on the monopod earlier. So it's the Sony's turn to act as a dash cam for a bit. I guess we'll also get a good test of the built-in microphones, how well they'll pick up my voice and note of the engine and so on. Engine note, I think, is the word I'm looking for. Time for some video and photos from the town square and main street of my town. Now these are fully zoomed out, zoomed halfway, and zoomed all the way in. And the same thing facing the other way is fully zoomed out, halfway zoom, and fully zoomed in. The cameras don't seem to agree on what halfway is. This is handheld, by the way, as it would be on a vacation or something. And the Sony's turn to pan across the square. Here are some stills and videos from the city harbor. Where's the obligatory "I'm too stupid to notice the shadow in my face" selfie? This is fully zoomed on the Sony. Some seabirds, the harbor. Again, fully zoomed, filming some seabirds in the harbor. This time with the Panasonic. Forgot to say, but both cameras have been on the monopod with the ball joint unlocked. Hi, Ducky. Hi, Ducky. Oh, there's another one. Where are you? Hi, Ducky. Where's the female? There she is. Hi, Ducky. This is handheld with a Panasonic, and I'm this far away. Hi, Ducky. This is shot handheld with the Sony. And I'm this far away. Time for some indoor tests, both photo and video. Natural daylight through the blinds, and then blinds closed with my very weak ceiling lights in there. Okay, time for an indoor zoom test. Here's the Panasonic. And here's the Sony. Now notice how the Sony loses focus here. I didn't expect that. And here's a low light zoom test with the Panasonic. Okay, here's an indoor low light zoom test. Now this is even weirder. In the low light zoom test, the Sony doesn't lose focus at full zoom. Here's a low light zoomed photo with the Panasonic at 143mm equivalent, and here's a similar low light zoomed photo at 183 with the Sony. Now this one's extreme. This is fully zoomed in a dimly lit room. I think it's the only photo where the Sony struggled compared to the Panasonic. So here are my final thoughts on these cameras, filmed with the camera I'm talking about as I give you my final conclusions. So, the Sony HX99 then. Well, I think it has good stabilization. It's small, it's light. The audio quality is pretty good for a compact camera. The zoom range is amazing for such a small camera. I mean, you do sacrifice some low light performance since it's only a 0.3 inch sensor. But on the whole, it's met my expectations actually. Things I don't like, well, it is a bit plasticky. Does feel cheaper than the Panasonic. This does, however, also mean that it's lighter. So it's a smaller, lighter point-and-shoot that easily fits in your pocket. You can bring it anywhere, basically. And if it wasn't for the 5-minute 4K video recording limit, I would probably not have looked elsewhere, actually. So on the whole, I'm really satisfied with this camera. And looking back at the videos and the photos that I took yesterday, preparing for this comparison, I'd say it's the winner in image quality, because it's got sharper photos with more detail and better color reproduction. And I think it's a toss-up between the Sony and Panasonic when it comes to video image stabilization, even though watching that driving footage, wow, the Panasonic looked like it was on a, I don't know, a cement mixer or something. And the Sony, while rattling a bit, it was pretty stable. I mean, it doesn't come close to my action camera, but that's to be expected. But for a point and shoot in this price range is good. I mean, I went from the Sony RX100 first generation to this, and while it does feel like a step down in like macro photography, like extreme close-ups and low light performance, I honestly don't miss it that much using this camera. I mean, the first generation RX100 doesn't have 4K. It's only a 10 times zoom, and also I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, it doesn't have a flip-up screen like the HX99 or indeed the later generation RX100s. So on the whole, I'm really happy with the switch from that as well, and I do feel it's like pound for pound, it's the better camera of the two. So what about the Panasonic DCTZ95 then? Is it a bad camera? I wouldn't say so. Not by any stretch of the imagination. It's a good point and shoot. It does a lot of the things that Sony does. I mean, they have the same zoom range. The pixel count is higher on the sensor, but that means, or should mean at least, worse low light performance, since every pixel gets less light than on the Sony. And it's not that big of a difference. I mean, the Sony is 18 point something and the Panasonic is 20 point something, so it's not that different. What else does it have? Well, the same zoom range, I probably said that already. It does have 5-axis stabilization. It does lack some functions that the Sony does have, like you cannot shoot in 4K 24 frames per second. It's strictly 25 or 30, which are the why am I not in focus? Which are the PAL and NTSC standards. But 24 is sort of the cinema standard, so that should really be included, especially since this is even a newer camera than the HX99. So what does the Panasonic have going for it? Well, it is a bit bigger, which is maybe not a positive again, but what it does mean it's sturdier. It does feel like the build quality is better. There's more metal in it, not as much plastic as on the Sony. It does use a standard SD card. I forgot to say that about the Sony. It uses micro SD, which in itself is not a bad thing, but it's kind of weird with a camera using a micro SD card that's not an action camera. That's kind of strange. And I have to talk about battery life as well. That's another point down for the Panasonic, sadly. Because yesterday when I was shooting videos in the forest and taking photos and that, as you could probably tell from this video, I did the exact same things with both cameras. Photos, videos, the exact same things. And
while I was doing the low light photography and stuff in my living room, the Panasonic ran out of battery, while the Sony lasted for, well, a while longer, let's say. So definitely get an extra battery if you decide to go with the Panasonic. Well, also I paid almost half the price of the Sony for the Panasonic. I got both these cameras used from Facebook or other online ads. So this is definitely not a paid promotion. I bought these cameras myself. And if you can find one used and you want something that feels a bit sturdier and more rugged, I wouldn't say rugged, it's not like waterproof or weatherproof or anything, but it's more rugged than the Sony. Or if you're familiar with Panasonic cameras and you sort of like the interface and the menus better, then this is definitely not a bad camera. It takes good, sharp photos, shoots really sharp and good 4K video, especially like if it's on a monopod or tripod zoomed in really far. It does that really well. Then again, like you've seen, the autofocus is not as good as on the Sony. It's not as fast as on the Sony. The stabilization, well, that seems to be a toss-up, because at one point the Panasonic seemed better, and at one point the Sony seemed better. And also the Panasonic seemed to do the indoor focusing better. And also, it could focus fully zoomed on things closer. So if you zoom the same amount on the Panasonic as on the Sony, the Panasonic can still focus on things that are closer, so you get a closer shot. So that's a positive for the Panasonic. But like I said, on the whole, I think the Sony takes home this competition, especially with the cropping, because my arm is getting really tired holding the Panasonic this far from my face to get me in the shot, and I suspect that when I watch this back, my face will be cut off a lot. So this is my first ever review video of anything, and also sort of my first time comparing to similar cameras. So if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, don't give it a thumbs down. Just leave a comment below on what I forgot, what could be better, and also leave a comment below if there's something you're wondering about that I forgot, or if something was unclear, just let me know. So there are a few things I forgot to say about the Panasonic. The viewfinder is slightly bigger than on the Sony, and also the Sony one is a pop-up one that you have to pull out to use, so it's a bit more cumbersome and also a bit smaller, so it's a tiny bit harder to see what you're doing. Also, the touch screen on the Panasonic is better, because on the Panasonic you can actually do more things on the screen. You can pinch zoom like on a cell phone, which you cannot do on the Sony when you're in play mode. So on the Sony, if you open a photo and you want to zoom in on it, you can't do that. You have to use the zoom control on the front of the camera, and then you can move around in the picture using your finger, just like on the Panasonic, but you can't do small increments of zoom like that. Also, the play controls for videos in play mode, you can use the screen for that, which is really handy. Otherwise, both cameras have like touch focus and stuff like that, which is really handy sometimes. I gotta say though, something that I have to look up in the menu of the Panasonic is the touch screen activation when you're using the viewfinder, because I noticed that because it does have touch focus, so if you're using the viewfinder to see what you're doing zoomed in on a tripod or something like that, or the monopod as I did yesterday, your cheek, if you have your right eye to the viewfinder, your cheek touches the screen and actually changes the focus point because it touches the touch focus, and there has to be a way to deactivate that when the viewfinder is active, but I just haven't found it yet. Okay, that's all. Bye!